Hi everyone, and welcome to today's expert chat. My name is Trinia. I'm a team member here at Understood. And today we're going to be talking about helping kids who struggle with managing screen time. And we're very lucky to have Dr. Kristin Carothers, who's a child psychologist, joining us. Kristin, do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Trinia. My name is Dr. Kristin Carothers. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist who specializes in work with children and adolescents who present with learning and attention issues. I was formerly at the Child Mind Institute in New York City, and I'm currently practicing at Ph.D. Psychological Associates in Atlanta, Georgia. So thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so glad to have you here. And I'm really excited about this topic. As a former high school teacher, I definitely had kids, especially kids with ADHD who struggled with staying focused when they were on the computer. I was in like a one-to-one school, so every kid had a computer. We did a lot of stuff on computers. And so kids oftentimes had trouble with staying focused on a task. And then we also, here at Understood, we get lots of comments from parents asking about kids that are having trouble transitioning, like from playing video games to a different activity, and just dealing with those issues. So we're going to get into a lot of that today.
Sounds great.
But to set us up, I just want to let our viewers out there know, if you have a question for Kristin, you can go ahead and type it in the chat box, in the comments box, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can. And it's usually helpful if you can give us your child's age or grade level so that we can give a more targeted response.
Perfect.
But to get started, Kristin, can you tell us, what are some of the reasons that kids might struggle with managing screen time?
Okay, so one of the things I think is important for us to remember as parents and teachers is that when anybody is engaged in a fun activity and it's really rewarding and it's something that you enjoy and it makes you have social connections with others, it's something that you might not want to stop just naturally. I think the issue for us is that we didn't use screens to the extent that our kids use screens. But if we think about our use of screens now, we are also pretty into screens and may have difficulty separating from them, whether it's us checking our own social media networks or being on the screen because of work issues. Screens are highly reinforcing. I think one of the biggest reasons it's tough for kids to break away from screen time is that they're engaged in a game or an activity that's really rewarding and reinforcing for very little input. And so what happens is you can just be playing a simple Candy Crush game and you do something really easy and you got 1,000,000 points. Well, if I can just swipe my finger and get 1,000,000 points, I'll swipe my finger 1,000,000 times and I'll get 1,000,000 points because it's really exciting. My brain is wired to respond to things in the environment that are exciting to me and I'm going to be more likely to continue that behavior over time. So I want us to think about kids and screen time as like a natural response to something that's reinforcing or rewarding in our environments. If we enjoy playing basketball, we're doing really well, we're making 1,000,000 points, we're going to continue to play basketball. Screens are different because they require very little input for very high reward, and they're built into every part of our lives now.
That's such a good point. Even adults have a hard time transitioning off of using computers, getting off social media, and doing things that maybe aren't as rewarding, things that we maybe don't want to do or are avoiding.
Right. So it's not just them.
Exactly. Do you have a recommendation though, especially since all of us are using screens more and more frequently for work, for school, for our social lives? Should we be putting a limit on kids as to how much time they're spending on screens or on technology?
I think it's definitely a good idea to have structure and limits around screen use so that it doesn't take over the entire day. I know what happens to myself and the kids that I work with and even adults that I work with is once you're on a screen, you lose track of time. And you may have had certain things set up for your day, but because you're so absorbed in the screen, you may miss deadlines or miss certain activities that you're supposed to be involved in. And so the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 2 hours hours of screen time per day for most children and adolescents, and they include television time in that screen time. For the families that I work with, I try to balance what's recommended as like the best practice versus what we can really manage in our everyday lives. And some families may need some TV time in the morning to help get some people motivated to get out of the house or get dressed. Some families may use some TV time or screen time as a reward at the end of the day. And then kids are going to be on screens during the school day. So I would say you want to look at 2 hours as your gold standard. But really the point is to have a limit and to have some structure around it. One of the things I think parents also and teachers have to be mindful of is that you are modeling appropriate screen usage as a parent or as a teacher. So if every time you're in a car or you're at home, you are on your screen and have your screen in front of you, you are also modeling for your kids that it's okay to always have your screen by your side. So I think it's just important to really be thoughtful about the purpose of using the screen. Is this a leisure activity or is this an educational activity? Or is it just that I'm idle and I don't realize how much I depend on the screen when I'm idle?
Mm-hmm. And do you have general suggestions of how parents can set up this structure for screen time? Is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Go ahead.
I think one of the ways so first of all, parents need to think about the ages of their children, and then the purpose of the screen usage. So for younger kids, most often the screen is going to be used for some leisure activity. Maybe the parent has something to do and they want the kid to be on the screen so that the kid is occupied. It could be that there's a specific educational game that they want to use to reinforce a skill. What I would say is that 30-minute blocks are long enough for screen usage. Once we get over 30 minutes, we get into an hour and a half, a person might become so absorbed that it's really difficult to pull away. If it's a television screen and it's the length of a movie and a kid can sit for a movie, that's about an hour to an hour and a half. But with a screen or with a game, I recommend like a 30-minute block and then a break. Within that 30-minute period, you want to work in some time to help the kid taper off usage. So it's not just like a timer went off at the end of 30 minutes and you're snatching the screen away. At about 25 minutes, you want to give the kid a warning that it's going to be time to hand the screen back in calmly. But before you even set up this structure, you've got to have a conversation with kids about what screen time looks like and what the rules and expectations are going to be. So if the expectation is you're going to use the screen in a setting where the entire family is there and that you're going to have 30 minutes and that 30 minutes will be denoted by an alarm clock, which will tick down the time, and that there's going to be a 5-minute warning. And at that 5-minute warning, the kid should probably start to think about whether or not they can continue the game or they need to slow down. And if they are able to transition off the game calmly, that they'll be able to earn the time again later that day or the following day. Those are all some things that you want to set up well in advance of providing screen time so that the kid knows the structure and that you know what the structure is and that you can both agree to it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point about giving like a 5-minute warning or letting kids know like exactly how much time they're going to have, because you always know, like, kids are going to be like, oh, no, I'm right in the middle of this battle. I need to play
I'm about
for 5
to win.
Exactly.
5 more minutes. You can't do this to me. My friends are on, and they just got on late. Those are all the types of things that we hear.
Exactly.
And
so is it helpful? Like, I know sometimes it might be helpful for parents to understand how the game works so that they know, like, if a kid is at a certain point and there's only 5 minutes left, like, don't start a new battle or whatever it is.
Right.
Because you're not going to have enough time.
Right. And so, okay, I like this point, Trinia, because one of the things that I'll recommend to parents is that they get their kid to teach them to play the game or to do the activity that they're doing on the screen. One of the things is it's special time that improves relationships for parents and kids. The other thing is it gets you to allow them to teach you something. You get to take direction from kids, and that can be really nice for them. But most importantly, you get to see what they're being exposed to. So you can decide, oh, is this something that I really don't agree with and that I want to have a conversation about later? Or is this something that I also find enjoyable? I think that the barrier is that these games aren't often reinforcing for parents, or it's like, I don't want to play Minecraft, or I don't want to play Grand Theft Auto. I think it's awful. But the point is to get in there and to learn what your kid is doing and what they're being exposed to every day.
We have gotten a lot of questions coming in on YouTube about helping young kids, so like ages 7 to 10, and specifically parents are out, like their kids are playing games like Minecraft and Fortnite that are very engaging and the kids are really into it. Do you have any specific suggestions for how parents can help these younger kids transition off? And I know we've already given some, but do you have more?
Yeah, the YouTube issue is a big one. And so most of the time, the kids are just watching somebody else play the game who's a master. And there are lots of different things that are happening when the kid is watching YouTube. They're being exposed to music that is like the background music that sometimes can have rough content. They're being exposed to someone else's reactions when they play the game. They're learning skills to beat the game when they play it themselves. And it's basically... I know that it is also a topic of social conversation when kids get back to school. So that's another reason it's reinforcing is you want to be a part of the in crowd. Everybody is watching YouTube and watching these specific YouTubers play these games. I think for parents, it's really important to be clear about the types of channels the kid is allowed to watch. If there are channels that are off limits, making sure that you set up some parental controls ahead of time through your computer system or through your Wi-Fi to make sure that the kids can access those. But I think it's very similar to the screen time, knowing that first of all, knowing the YouTube channel the kid wants to watch. What is the episode they want to watch and how long is that episode? If it's an hour and a 30-minute YouTube clip, they're not going to have an hour and 30 minutes of uninterrupted time to watch that. And so letting them know ahead of time, look, you got 30 minutes. I can fast forward to tell you where you're going to be when that 30-minute point hits. But when that point hits, it's going to be time to stop. And when I ask you to stop, if you stop right away, you'll be able to watch another 30 minutes after dinner or after you've taken your bath. So linking it, making it a contingent behavior that is based on something that had to be done first in order to earn that second part. So you've got two things happening. The kid learns, if I transition calmly, I can earn more time. If I earn more time, that time will be given after I do something I'm responsible for. Now, you may still get a tantrum. The point is not to focus on the tantrum, but to focus on, did the kid get off? Okay, so as a parent, it's about really being deliberate about you monitoring. So to say, oh, the kid should know to get off after 30 minutes because I told them to get off. No, as a parent, I want you to get in there and you to say, look, it's 25 minutes. You got 5 more minutes. I'm setting the timer. At the end of the timer, you're saying, you're coming over and you're saying, time is up. Would you like me to press the pause button or would you like to press it? Okay, and giving the kid that option, they press it. It's a specific praise. Thank you for listening right away. You've earned 30 minutes later. They're unwilling to get off because you were unwilling to listen the first time. You won't be able to get your 30 minutes later, but you can try again tomorrow. And then moving forward and redirecting to the next activity. I know I'm talking a lot, but I think where parents get stuck is that they'll continue to have a conversation about the tantrum or the fact that the kid didn't transition or, I don't understand why we go through this every day, which then gives more attention to that behavior. Once you set the limit, you follow through and you move on to the next activity. It may take the kid a while to catch up and to transition smoothly, but you model for them that a transition is going to happen regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes practice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a first-time thing where it's just going to work. It's going to take time and practice.
Absolutely. I love your ideas about having a reward system and kind of being not too engaged in if the child is having a tantrum or is throwing a fit about it, to not really engage with that negative behavior, just be consistent with this is the plan, this is what we're doing, this is the reward you can earn, and what if the child refuses to get off? So what if they just continue playing? Then do we need to have consequences in place for that as well?
Yeah, I think if a child continues to play, once the limit has been set, then you just make it clear that the child is making a decision. They've made a choice. That is not a good choice that goes against what you've asked them to do, and that there are consequences for all of our actions, whether or not they are positive or negative. So If you continue to do what I told you not to do, then the consequence is you will not have YouTube X tomorrow. I think when we put consequences into place, it's really important to make sure that it's time limited, it's specific. If you take away YouTube for the week or 2 weeks, one of the things you got to think about is, can you actually stick to that consequence? The second thing you've got to think about is, in the moment, the kid may not care about you threatening for 2 weeks because they're just thinking about what's happening in the moment. And so you want to make sure that whatever consequence you set into place is immediate and is effective. And so if the kid continues to play, if you have the ability to shut down a program remotely, you shut it down remotely. If you have the ability to take the computer and to move it, or take the screen and to move it, you do that. But if there's a chance you're going to get into a physical power struggle, leave it. Ultimately, you are the parent and you do still have power. This is one instance where your child is trying to assert their will, okay? But there's going to be a consequence for that. It may be that the iPad goes away for the rest of the night, okay?
Thank you. We have a question here from, this came in on our YouTube stream, and it says, my 10-year-old autistic boy is constantly on my phone from when he wakes up until he goes to sleep. And this parent is wondering what they can do. And maybe to generalize this a little bit, we've heard from a lot of parents that sometimes they use screen time or phone game time for children who maybe sometimes if a child is having like a meltdown or is having sensory overload, it can help them to like step back and like play a game, and then it kind of like calms them down or makes them feel better. So do you have recommendations for parents who have kids with learning and attention issues or autism who maybe are using screens for a different purpose?
I think it can get tricky sometimes when parents have had the experience that they've given a screen and the screen has helped the child to soothe, and then it gets overgeneralized to, well, now I need the iPad at all times so that I can stay calm. And so we don't want it to become that the screen is a crutch. And so it can be difficult for kids who are on the autism spectrum and struggle with reciprocity or understanding other people's points of view, to understand why mom may not want you on her phone all day. If you're on her phone all day, then she can't make calls. And in those instances, I recommend like something that is really behavioral in nature. And so it would be that either you put your phone in a place where the child is not able to access it, or you keep it on your person so that they can't access it, but they know that they'll be able to earn some time on your phone after they've done X, Y, or Z. But it's really about setting a limit and saying, this is what my phone is for. It is not just for games so that I can make calls and that I can send emails. You can use my phone for games at this time. Now, remember, with a kid who has difficulty with reciprocity or who is inflexible in terms of routines, this may have become a part of their routine. And so now the work is going to have to be done to create a new routine that goes in place of that screen being there. So instead of your phone, what replaces that? Okay, what can the kid use instead? When can they look forward to the screen? And so it's being really thoughtful about what the activity is going to be that replaces the phone. There was something else you asked about in terms of like limiting the time and access. Sometimes I recommend to parents of teenagers and preteens that phones are not left in their rooms. In my work and based on the research, when kids have access to screens and unlimited access, they're going to use them whenever they can, and they may be exposed to content that they don't need. And so what I typically recommend is that there is a turn-in time for screens and phones, and that there is a place where those screens and phones go. And then after the morning routine is completed, the person then gets back that screen. So if bedtime is at 10 o'clock, I would say an hour before bedtime so that there's enough time for shower, winding down, getting clothes laid out, etc. But this is all part of working out a routine for the day. So for a teenager who maybe goes to bed at 11 o'clock, I would recommend they turn in their phones to their parents at 10. A lot of teenagers think this is unreasonable. I use my phone for music. I need music to fall asleep, or I need to check to see my friend might text me because they need something tomorrow. How will I know what they need? There's a point when things have to shut down. And at that, and I recommend that parents have the phones in their rooms. If you got really big behavioral problems where a kid is going to sneak into the room and take the phone, I've recommended having just a little lockbox. Phone goes in the lockbox. You get it back in the morning as soon as you're dressed. When you are consistent with that routine, then kids will know this is what happens in my house. In other people's homes, they may be able to have their screens for unlimited times, but that's not the way my parents work.
Yeah, when I was teaching, I definitely had students who would talk to me about being up like at all hours of the night, being on social media or texting, and even like they might be asleep and then wake up because somebody texted them, and then they're on their computer or on their phone, engaging with people instead of sleeping, which is really important for people, and especially teenagers.
Yes, really important for them to get their sleep. But again, I think this is like a modeling opportunity for us as adults. One of the things that I've had to do is turn off my text message alerts at night, because I know that I'll respond to a text message alert if I get it, and then I won't fall back asleep. Now, you got to tolerate some anxiety about not knowing if a text came through. Well, my coping thought is, if it's really important, someone will call, and then I'll respond to a phone call.
And what about teenagers being involved on social media and with the texting? Like, would we expect like more leniency with allowing them to be on their phones more frequently than younger kids, or how do you negotiate like the social aspect of that, either positive or negative social aspect?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've got to understand is text messaging is the way that teens and young adults communicate. They are less likely to pick up a phone and actually engage in a phone call. They're used to getting information immediately and to sending information immediately. That's just the way their world has been designed. And so we don't want to necessarily place like archaic structures on them because they're living in a different time. One of the things that I think is really important to do is to have some conversations about the content of text messaging, of text messages, and the fact that people may share the things that you said without your knowledge or without your awareness. And so it's really important to be careful about what you share. So pictures without clothing, inappropriate, that can be shared wherever. Messages that have a lot of detail that is personal that you wouldn't want shared, you might pick up the phone and have a conversation about those instead. And so I really think it's about etiquette around social media usage, around the content of text messaging, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's so important. So important to be having those conversations.
Yes, definitely.
And we only have about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
I did want to talk a little bit about schoolwork. And so, obviously kids might be spending more time on their computers, nowadays because everything is on computers. They might be typing assignments or doing research. But do you have suggestions for parents as to how they can help kids stay focused on what they're supposed to be doing on the computer instead of playing games or doing all this other stuff?
Yeah. So this is a really tough one. And it's because you want to say, okay, one browser window open at a time. And the only browser window that should be open should be the browser that's focused on your schoolwork. But it's really hard to monitor this if you're not standing over the kid's shoulder and looking at the screen while they're working. So I think one of the things to do ahead of time is to figure out what is the technology requirement for the assignment. Is it that you have to go to a specific website and you have to do some research? Whatever it is, you don't need Messenger up. You don't need Facebook Messenger up. You don't need Instagram or Snapchat readily available. You don't need to use YouTube. And so as a parent, one of the things I would recommend is just saying, for homework time, I want you to focus on homework. Within that time frame, you should be on these websites only. There are ways to set up web browsers that restrict or limit permissions so that you're only able to access certain sites, but that can be harder. What I would just say is turn off any of the G chats, the instant messaging apps, any of the social media apps. Those shouldn't be up at that time. If there's an app that's related to a game like Splix.io or any of the Minecraft, there should only be one browser open at a time. And that browser should only have windows that are linked to the educational material. You should do checks. So every 10 minutes, come over and do a check. I think you can also see how the person is progressing through the actual assignment. If it's taking 2 hours to complete an assignment, which typically takes 30 minutes, then they're probably distracted. For kids who are easily distracted, I think it's important for parents to set timers and check in after that amount of time. So to say to a kid, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to work on this question, and then I'll be back. Set the timer, back at 10 minutes. Let's see what you've done. Okay.
Yeah, I think that can be super helpful. Doing the check-ins, setting timers, and really the goal is to get the child to be able to self-monitor and make sure that they're getting their work done when they need to get it done, right?
Right. We want to build adults who are independent, and so we're doing all this setting of timers and structuring so that they'll learn when they leave home, okay, I need to have a structure. This is the structure that works for me.
Yeah, exactly. And we can even think about it in terms of what we do as adults and how do we monitor our own time, and how can we get our children to learn these processes and these skills in order to be able to do it on their own. So we are running out of time, but I do want to give you a moment. We did have another question about helping kids like break the obsession with screen time. And of course, we all experience that of having like this obsession. But do you want to leave us with any last thoughts of how we can help our kids break this obsession?
Okay, so spring is coming. I think one of the ways to help kids to get away from getting stuck on screens is to have some activities that are organized outside of the home, preferably outdoors if it is safe and if the weather is good, to actually get into teaching kids physical games. So if it's a sport, if it's a board game, even introducing things that kids aren't typically introduced to now because there's so much reliance on screens. So can we go outside and go for a walk or go for a jog? Should we go to the park and get on the swings? Can you enroll the kid in a baseball camp or in a soccer camp? What about a Monopoly board game, and introducing them to that you can have fun without having a screen. You can have social interactions with your friends by inviting them to play outside or to go for a walk. And so I think it's really important for parents to practice what they preach, to put the phones down for a bit of time and to get out and focus on activities and doing things with other people physically and in person as much as you can.
Absolutely. I love that idea of finding other activities kids enjoy that maybe are as enjoyable or more enjoyable than just being on a computer or on a screen of some kind. Thank you so much for being here with us, Kristin.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to all of our viewers. If you had a question that didn't get answered, or if you want to talk more with other parents about some of these issues or questions that have come up for you, you can join our community. You can find that at u.org/community. And if you missed any part of this chat, or if you want to look at upcoming chats or view some of our previously recorded chats, you can find all of those at u.org/calendar. And that is it for us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good day.